Hi, my name is Jules Chin Greene, and I'm here at C2E2 2026. And here with me in the pop spot is Zoe Thorogood.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm way better now. I have a dog on my lap that I can pet during this interview.
Yeah, I see like Pippin's face is just smushed against the side of the chair.
He is just out. He's having the time of his life right now.
Absolutely. And so just to start off here, I found out recently that you didn't fall in love with drawing until you were age 14, which is so interesting. And so what led you to discover that you love drawing?
Yeah, so I find most artists I talk to kind of are drawing out the womb. Like as soon as they're born, they know that they're an artist. For me, when I was a kid, I fell in love with theater and I wanted to be a playwright. Mm-hmm. And I loved writing, I loved reading. I knew I wanted to write, I wanted to create stories. It wasn't until, I was around 14, I'd recently discovered manga, I'd got really into Death Note and stuff. And the stories I was writing, I was very curious what my characters looked like. And that was really my reason to start learning to draw, was I just wanted to visualize these worlds and these people that lived in my head and just, see them on paper. But art was never anything that came naturally. It was just a will and a passion I had for storytelling that, made it jump out, I guess.
For sure, yeah. I guess like when you describe it that way, it makes a lot of sense because you can, design your own worlds and characters and that's kind of the fun about like visual art is that you can blend all these other forms of art into like
absolutely
an image. That's cool. And also like something that I really admire about your work is that is the way that you use pen and ink and also sticker sheets with the screen tones. And so how did you discover that kind of as your MO?
Well, it was mostly through manga. My love of manga. I loved Death Note. I loved Bakuman, which was a series by the same creators, which was a series about these two high school boys that decide they want to create manga. And I found it so interesting as a young person because it was so informative. And they went through, I don't know if you've read Bakuman, but it follows the story of this artist, and it's very like in depth about like the nibs he uses and just like learning this process. And I used that book kind of as a guide. And I've just always loved drawing by hand on paper, having a physical, I call it my caveman tendencies. It's just like, like I have ink, I have paper, make item. You know what I mean? Like, it's as simple as that. Like I never got into doing digital art just because I feel like there's a disconnect for me personally. But my process was all just from what I learned from Bakuman, really.
That's so cool. And so you've also like spoken in the past about how you originally worked in concept art for video games. Was there like a specific game that really spawned your love of video games?
Borderlands. And that's also, Borderlands was a huge inspiration for my art style as well. I think my art is like very manga influenced. But there's also a lot of video game stuff in there as well. And like Borderlands having like the very detailed character designs, like very bold lines on everything. I love that. I love that art style and I love that game. But Borderlands was possibly
For sure.
the one.
And so are there any games that you're playing right now that that are kind of living in your head rent free?
Oh yeah, most recently Expedition 33, Clair Obscur, gosh, it took a while to get to it because it was one of those games like I felt like it was being so overhyped. It was in my face all the time. I was like, it can't be that great. Come on, guys, it's just Final Fantasy. And then I played it and I was like, oh, okay. This is a deeply personal story. I love it.
This game's got hands.
Yeah, right.
And that also brings me to my next point because what I also really enjoy is when you take existing characters like the women from like Silent Hill 2 or like Maëlle from Clair Obscur, and then you render them like in your own style. And for me, like as a video game fan, just human in the world, it's cool because it's a new way of like seeing the character. And so I was curious, like do you have like a particular method for how you go about like translating an existing character within your own style?
That's a difficult question. Not really. I don't think. I think I typically I'll only draw characters that I am familiar with. I think anytime I've taken commissions and it's a character that I know nothing about, I feel like the art comes out flat and it comes out kind of soulless, I guess, because I have no real grasp of the character. So I think in case of like Maëlle, which is a character that I felt deeply connected to, I think it's easy. I know who she is. I know how she feels. I know all this stuff about her. It's like it's easy to translate. Just because I feel like I know who she is. It's the same with like Silent Hill. Like I love Silent Hill. I feel like I have an understanding of it, so it's just easy to translate into art. Whereas like something I'm not familiar with, I really struggle with that.
For sure. And so to go to It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, you drew lots of animals in that book, and something that I've been wondering is like, is there like an animal species that you didn't get to draw that you would like love to draw sometime? I
am terrible at drawing animals. Like right now, the book I'm working on has a little chihuahua in it, and every time I draw a panel with him, I'm like, oh. Don't listen to this. But I can't draw dogs. I can't draw animals. And with It's Lonely, they were so simplified that they were kind of like a little bit like kids' drawings, I guess. But the animals I was picking, I was mostly picking animals that I knew I could sort of do okay, and people could be like, yeah, that's supposed to be a frog, or like that's supposed to be a dog or a cat or whatever. There's no animal I would like to draw because I just can't draw animals.
I mean, if you think you're bad at drawing, like at least you're probably not anywhere nearly as bad as like those like medieval like Christian monks trying to draw like dogs,
right? Or babies, or it's just like a tiny man.
Exactly, yeah. Or like snails with like jousting things, lances. I don't even know.
Those guys needed to work on their fundamentals for sure. Yeah. Like the rendering, pretty good, but
everything else was kind of suspect. And so you also created like It's Lonely and Billy Scott like a few years ago now. Has the distance that has come with time given you like a greater understanding of your past self?
Yeah. Wow.
That's a very existential question.
No, that's a brilliant question. I think that I look back at those pieces of work now and I see it more like, especially Lonely. It's an autobiography, but it's also very much not. I think even when I was working on it, I realized there came a point where it was less about me and it was more a story about an artist trying to find herself and what this book was supposed to be. And that line between fiction and reality got super, super blurred. And I think I look at it now and I'm not the same person that I was while making that book, but also the person that was making that book is not entirely the person that is represented in the book. So it's it's complicated. And I think when I read, well, not that I've never read Billy since it was put out, but when I think about Billy, and I just see such a naive young person that was excited about art and very passionate, and I think it's super wholesome. I think if I made that book today, it would be way more cynical, way more grounded and realistic than it was. And I'm glad it's not. I'm glad it's the way that it ended up being, which I think is just very, very, very childlike, but in a way that I think is quite beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, what could be better than just having like that whimsy kind of distilled, and captured in time?
Right, it's just hope and ambition just condensed in a book that I've lost in my adult years.
Yeah, and so I've also seen that you're making a lot of music recently. Have you always been a musician?
So, when I was very young, I was really into playing clarinet. But then my teacher changed when I was a kid. I was getting really into clarinet. My teacher changed, and I just didn't want to go back because I didn't want to deal with something. I've always dealt with anxiety, and this was like kind of before my parents knew I was dealing with it. And so I dropped it and completely dropped music fully. But then my partner's a musician, and so the past few years, just watching him play music and just being inspired by him, it's made me want to pick it up again. And the past few years, I've just been trying to get back into it, trying to make little songs for animations and stuff. And the project that I'm working on right now is a project with my partner, and we're making a comic that goes along with an album. And so it's kind of this really brilliant like collaboration of different mediums and stuff. And but yeah, music's a thing that I had as a kid, lost, and I'm now finding again at, you know, the age of 27. So that's pretty nice.
Nice. I mean, it's like a boomerang that way.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so that also, you know, speaking of Vampire on Aisle 6, that the idea of it being a comic but also an album is so interesting. Could you tell us a bit about what this book is?
So, it's a really strange book. It's a story about, well, let me start again. It's a story that my partner Joe had in mind like years ago. He's been talking about for years this idea he's had about this vampire that's trapped in a grocery store. He can't get out because the sun's up, and he's just stuck there for like until the sun sets. And he didn't have an ending. There was no further. There was nothing. That was it. It was just bare bones. But it was like, it was such an interesting concept that like stuck with me. And the past few years we've been talking, hey, we should do a project together. We should do a comic and an album together. But it's never quite aligned. And then yeah, sometime last year it was like, well, let's just do your vampire story. I'll write it. I'll turn it into a whatever I'm going to turn it into, and we'll just make some music to go along with it. And it's become. I was working on a book called It Took My Brother, which was a fantasy story about my feelings regarding my own brother's death. And it really just a challenging book to make. And I was getting really far with it, but I was just realizing that I wasn't helping myself by making it at this time. And I'm going to get back to it, and I'm excited to get back to it. But I'm just like, I'm so soon in my own grief journey right now that it's just like, I realized that it just wasn't the time. And so with Vampire in Aisle 6, I've managed to kind of turn it into a story about PTSD and grief, and using vampirism as a metaphor for PTSD. And so I'm managing to write about trauma, or what you know, my grief has done to me, but in a way that's disconnected. It's, you know, through this experience of this guy that's become a vampire, and his girlfriend's kicked him out because she doesn't believe he's a vampire, because vampires aren't real, and he's on the run, and he realizes, oh my gosh, the sun's coming up, I'm gonna die, I need to get into the closest building I can. It's a grocery store. And it's just that feeling of being trapped and and people not understanding what you're going through. And but it's also really violent and gory and a lot of fun, and it's just very, very absurd. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, that kind of is like life.
Right. Just being a vampire trapped in a grocery store.
Exactly, just being like, the sun, I'm afraid of the sun, I need to get inside. And so just to close things out, is there anything that you're nerding out about right now?
So I've been a big fan of Chainsaw Man for a really long time. I know that the manga ended last week. I haven't read all of part 2 yet, but I've just started watching the anime. I started watching the anime with my partner like last week, and I'm like, so I'm all about Chainsaw Man again. I was all about it a few years ago, but now I'm like, I'm fully back in my Chainsaw Man phase. So yeah, Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Of course, thank you.